The glass doors burst open as a barefoot girl stumbled into the marble atrium of Helix Dynamics. Rainwater dripped from her hair, pooling around her ankles as startled employees froze mid-conversation. The building, all chrome and perfection, had never seen dirt, much less a child covered in it. "Security!" someone barked. Two guards rushed forward, but before they could touch her, a sharp, childlike sound pierced the tension. Laughter. From the far corner of the room, a small boy giggled, high-pitched and pure. Heads turned. The barefoot girl turned too. Her eyes, dark, alert, curious, locked on him. He sat in a wheelchair, a thin boy with sandy hair and a look that carried too much quiet for someone so young. "Don't," said a woman in a sleek suit, raising her hand to the guards. "She's just a kid." But the girl had already moved, light-footed despite the puddles. Her name was Amira, though no one there knew it yet. The boy's name was Damien Voss, the only child of Damien Voss, billionaire founder of Helix Dynamics, a man who built satellites, hospitals, and everything money could buy except his son's voice. Damien had been deaf for 8 years. Damien appeared from the elevator, his presence cutting through the room like a blade. "What's going on?" he demanded. One of the guards gestured. "She came in from the street, sir. No shoes, no ID. Says she wants to see the boy." The girl raised her chin. "He's lonely," she said softly. Her voice trembled, not with fear, but certainty. "He wants to play." Damien frowned, glancing at his son. "How do you know that?" Amira pointed at Damien, then began to move her hands. Quick, graceful gestures. Sign language. Damien's face lit up. For the first time that day, he wasn't just observing. He was seen. Damien froze. He hadn't seen anyone sign to his son in months. Therapists came and went, hired and fired, each more expensive than the last. But this girl, this barefoot stranger, spoke to him like she'd known him forever. The employees exchanged confused looks as Damien signed back rapidly, eyes bright with excitement. Amira smiled, responding with gestures too fast for anyone else to follow. Damien stepped closer, watching. "You know sign language?" She nodded. "My brother was deaf. Before he..." Her voice trailed off, the sentence unfinished. Damien sighed. "You can't just walk into a private building." "He waved me in," Amira said, pointing to Damien. "He saw me outside." Damien nodded vigorously, hands moving with urgency. Damien glanced at the interpreter standing nearby, who translated awkwardly. "He says she helped a bird earlier. Said she's kind." The tension softened, just slightly. Amira knelt before Damien. "You shouldn't be alone all the time," she signed, smiling. "Even quiet worlds need laughter." He smiled back, and for the first time, Damien saw his son truly happy. Not just entertained, not distracted by toys, but alive. "All right," Damien muttered, rubbing his forehead. "You have 5 minutes." He turned to his assistant. "Get her out after that." But 5 minutes became 10. Then 20. Damien was giggling, clapping, his small voice cracking the air, faint but real. Amira whispered something softly, then pressed her ear close to his, frowning. "What are you doing?" Damien asked. She didn't answer. Her eyes were focused, serious. Then, gently, she touched his ear, her fingers moving like she was tracing something invisible. And suddenly, Damien gasped. The room went still. "Dad!" the boy whispered. Every sound stopped, even the rain outside. Damien's heart slammed against his ribs. "Damien, what did you just..." "Dad!" Damien shouted, louder now, clutching his ears. "I hear you! I hear you!" Gasps filled the hall. Employees stumbled backward, hands over mouths. Damien knelt beside his son, his voice shaking. "Say it again." "I can hear you," Damien sobbed. "I can hear everything." The barefoot girl stepped away slowly, her expression unreadable. "He's been ready to hear for a long time," she murmured. "How? What did you do?" Damien's voice cracked, disbelief warring with hope. Amira simply shook her head. "I just removed what didn't belong." He blinked, confused. Removed. A piece of plastic, she whispered. It was stuck deep. Someone put it there. A heavy silence fell. Security guards exchanged glances. The assistant stammered. That can't be, he's had dozens of specialists. Then they didn't look close enough, she said. Damien stared at her, pale. Do you understand what you're saying? Yes, she said quietly. I'm saying someone wanted him to stay deaf. The words hung like thunder. Ilya was laughing now, covering his ears at the sound of his own joy. Damien's chest rose and fell unevenly. His company had poured millions into research for a cure that never came, because someone, somewhere, made sure it didn't. He looked at Amira again, and for the first time, fear flickered in his eyes. Who are you? She smiled faintly. Just someone who listens. Damien exhaled shakily. You need to come with me. Now. He motioned for security, but not to remove her, to protect her. As they walked toward the elevator, Amira looked back at Ilya. The boy waved, still laughing through tears. She waved back, whispering something the camera would have loved to capture. If only people stopped hearing money, she said softly, and started hearing truth. The elevator doors closed behind them. Outside, the rain had stopped. The world was listening. If you're feeling the emotion right now, don't forget to subscribe and share this story. Because what's coming next? The elevator hummed as it rose, tense and silent. Damien Voss stood beside the barefoot girl, watching her reflection in the steel doors. She looked calm, too calm for what she'd just done. How did you know where to look? He asked finally. Amira didn't meet his eyes. Sometimes the truth hides in plain sight, she said quietly. You just have to listen differently. The doors opened into Damien's office, a space of glass, chrome, and quiet ego. He motioned for her to sit. You found something every doctor missed for 8 years. That's not luck. I didn't find it, she replied. I removed it. He frowned. Removed what? A piece of plastic, she said, folding her hands. Someone put it there. The words made him freeze. Are you saying that someone made sure he stayed deaf? She finished softly. Before Damien could respond, his office door opened and Dr. Rowan, his longtime physician, stepped in with forced cheer. Mr. Voss, I heard the news about Ilya. You mean the miracle you missed? Damien interrupted. The doctor blinked. Sir, I don't understand. She found something in his ear, Damien said coldly, nodding toward Amira. Something you never noticed. Explain that. Dr. Rowan's confidence faltered. Mr. Voss, these things can't happen overnight. Stop lying, Amira said. Her tone was calm, but her eyes burned. You knew. Rowan turned to her, offended. Who are you two? I'm the reason your lie fell apart. The doctor's face went pale. Mr. Voss, please, I can explain. Then do it, Damien said. Because if you can't, I'll make sure you never practice medicine again. Rowan hesitated, then whispered. There were directives, research programs. The Hearing Restoration Fund depended on his condition staying unresolved. If your son was cured, the funding stopped. The air vanished from the room. Damien's voice dropped to a growl. You kept my son deaf for profit. Rowan looked down. It wasn't my decision. But you followed it, Damien snapped. You let a child suffer. Amira stood. You didn't just silence a boy, she said softly. You silenced his father's soul. Damien's jaw clenched. Get out, he said. The doctor hesitated. Sir. Get out before I forget you're human. Rowan fled, leaving the office heavy with truth. Amira watched Damien crumble into his chair. You didn't want to see it, she said quietly. Money can buy doctors, not honesty. He rubbed his temples, eyes hollow. You talk like someone who's seen this before. I have. Her voice trembled. My brother. They said he was too sick. But really, he was too poor. So they stopped treating him. He died. Damien looked at her, the weight in his chest tightening. I'm sorry. She shook her head. Don't be sorry. Be different. As she turned to leave, Damien stopped her. Wait. If what you say is true, they'll try to bury it. And you. Amira met his eyes. Then it's your turn to be loud. She walked away, leaving wet footprints on the marble. For a long moment, Damien sat alone, his world spinning. His empire, everything he'd built, suddenly felt diseased. He pressed a button on his desk. Get me every medical report, every payment authorization, every signed document involving my son's case. Now. Hours later, files flooded his screen. Contracts, grants, and transactions he'd authorized himself. The deeper he scrolled, the more it hurt. He'd been unknowingly feeding the machine that broke his child. He whispered, "What have I done?" That night, Ilir slept peacefully for the first time in years. Damien stood in the doorway, listening to the quiet rhythm of his son's breathing. It wasn't silence anymore. It was life. The next morning, Damien drove to St. Helene Medical Center, where Ilir had been treated since childhood. The staff smiled at him like nothing had happened. "I want to see Dr. Kellen," he said. Minutes later, the hospital director greeted him, smooth as ever. "Mr. Voss, wonderful surprise. How's the boy?" "He can hear now," Damien said flatly. The man froze for half a second. "That's remarkable." "Yes," Damien replied. "Especially since your report said it was medically impossible." "Medicine evolves," Kellen said carefully. Damien's tone sharpened. "Not overnight. Unless someone's been lying." The doctor laughed nervously. "Mr. Voss, surely you don't believe." "I believe someone profited from my son's silence," Damien cut in. "And I'm going to find out who." Before the doctor could reply, a nurse entered quietly, her face pale. She clutched a folder. "Sir," she said softly to Damien, "you should see this." He opened it. Inside were documents, his son's name, treatment plans, red stamps reading ongoing study. Do not discharge. His hands trembled. "You turned my son into an experiment." The nurse whispered, "They said it was for science." Damien looked at her. "And you?" "I'm sorry," she said. "I stayed quiet." He closed the folder slowly. "Not anymore." He turned back to Dr. Kellen, whose fake composure was cracking. "You're finished," Damien said quietly. "And when I'm done, every name tied to this will burn." Kellen's smile faltered. "Be careful, Mr. Voss. The people funding this project." "I am the people," Damien said coldly. "And I'm done funding monsters." He left the hospital, rain starting to fall again. Each drop echoed like a clock ticking toward Judgment Day. Back in his car, he looked at the city skyline, his empire, and whispered, "If this is what power sounds like, I'd rather go deaf." If this story's pulling your heart already, hit that subscribe button and let me know your thoughts in the comments, because the storm that's coming next will shake everything he's built. The next 48 hours felt like a lifetime. Damien Voss didn't sleep. His office lights burned through the night as files, calls, and encrypted emails filled his screen. Every contract he opened led to another name, another hand feeding off his son's silence. By dawn, his phone buzzed with a single message from an unknown number. "Stop digging. Some doors aren't meant to be opened." He stared at it for a moment, then deleted it. He'd already lived too long behind closed doors. At noon, Damien called for an emergency board meeting. When the executives filed in, the men who had built fortunes under his name, he looked nothing like their confident leader. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot, but his voice was steel. "We've been funding medical fraud," he said. Confused murmurs filled the room. He projected the hospital records onto the glass wall, the falsified reports, the forged signatures, the payments approved in his name. Gasps and whispers broke through the silence. "You're accusing our own partners?" one man asked. "I'm accusing us," Damien replied. "Because we allowed this." "Damien," another interrupted, "this kind of exposure could sink us. We lose investors, contracts, the market collapses overnight." "I don't care about the market," Damien said coldly. "I care about my son." An older board member leaned forward. "You're emotional. Take some time." "I've had 8 years," Damien snapped. 8 years of silence. No more. He shut off the screen and walked out, leaving a room full of frightened millionaires staring at the ghost of their own morality. Outside, the air felt heavier. Cameras flashed through the lobby, news crews already sniffing around. Somehow, the story had leaked. By evening, headlines were everywhere. Billionaire's son's miracle sparks scandal. Medical cover-up at St. Helene Hospital. Helix Dynamics under investigation. The world that once praised Damien Voss now hunted him. But for the first time, he didn't care what it cost. He drove home through the rain, turning off his phone, his mind consumed by one thought: Amira. He hadn't seen her since that day in his office. No address, no trace. Just gone. Yet every time he heard his son laugh, he thought of her. That night, as thunder cracked outside, he sat with Elia by the window. The boy listened to the rain with fascination, tilting his head as if memorizing each sound. "Do you like it?" Damien asked. Elia nodded. "It's loud, but happy loud." Damien smiled faintly. "That's what freedom sounds like." The boy's small hand slipped into his father's. "Is the girl coming back?" "I hope so," Damien said softly. But Amira was already closer than he knew. Across the city, she sat in an old shelter, watching the news on a flickering television. The reporter's voice carried Damien's name again and again. She saw the footage of him leaving the boardroom, pale and furious, and something in her eyes softened. "He's listening," she whispered to herself. "Finally." A woman beside her, thin, weary, and clutching a child, said, "You know him." Amira hesitated. "Not really. But he's trying to fix what broke." The woman nodded. "Then maybe he's one of the good ones." Amira smiled sadly. Good men are just guilty men trying to make it right. The next morning, Damien was at the hospital again. But this time, he wasn't alone. Reporters filled the lobby. Patients watched as he handed a thick folder to the chief investigator. "These are the records," he said, his voice steady. "Every altered scan, every false report. I'm cooperating fully. No settlement. No silence." Flashbulbs exploded. The investigator nodded. "You understand this could destroy your company?" "Yes," Damien said. "But maybe it'll save someone else's child." As he turned to leave, someone shouted, "Mr. Voss, do you have anything to say to the families affected?" He paused at the door. "Listen to your loved ones," he said. "Don't let money do the talking." The cameras followed him into the street, rain blurring the lens, sirens wailing in the background. Hours later, the city buzzed with chaos. Investors were panicking, partners severing ties, politicians calling for hearings. But amidst the noise, something unexpected happened. People began to thank him. Emails poured in. Parents of children with untreated conditions. Whistleblowers. Nurses. People who'd been silenced by systems just like his. The flood of truth had started, and it wasn't stopping. That night, Damien received a small envelope on his doorstep. No return address. Inside was a single note. "Don't stop listening. A." He smiled faintly, clutching it like proof that the miracle hadn't vanished with the headlines. But peace didn't last long. By morning, the threats returned. Phone calls, emails, shadows following his car. The system he'd exposed wasn't dying quietly. In a dim garage, 2 men in suits spoke in low voices. "He's becoming a problem," one muttered. "If he keeps talking, we all go down. Then make sure he stops." Low-tone cue. Ambient suspense music begins. Meanwhile, Amira wandered the streets near Helix Tower, drawn by a feeling she couldn't name. She saw the security vans, the flashing lights, the reporters camped outside. When she spotted Damien stepping out of his car, she froze. He saw her too. For a moment, both just stared through the chaos. Billionaire and Barefoot girl, 2 lives stitched together by one miracle. "Amira!" he called. She turned to leave, but he caught up to her. "Where have you been?" "Nowhere that matters," she said softly. You didn't need me anymore. You're wrong, he said. You started this. You deserve to see how it ends. She hesitated, rain dripping from her hair. It doesn't end, Damien. You can't fix a world that profits from pain. He smiled weakly. Maybe not. But I can start breaking it apart. She looked at him for a long moment. Then promise me something, she said. Anything. When you win, don't become like them. He nodded. Never again. The wind howled through the street, thunder rumbling overhead. Somewhere behind them, a car engine started. Too sudden, too close. Get down! Damien shouted. A flash, the sound of shattering glass. Tires screeched. People screamed. When the chaos cleared, smoke hung in the air. A black car sped away into the rain. Damien coughed, pulling Amira behind a wall. Are you hurt? She shook her head, trembling. They won't stop. No, he said, eyes burning with resolve. But neither will I. If you're watching and can feel the storm building, hit that subscribe button now, because the final part of this story will leave you breathless. Sirens wailed through the soaked streets as paramedics rushed past, lights flashing against puddles and broken glass. Damien's jacket was torn, his face streaked with blood, but his eyes were clear, burning with a calm that frightened even the officers trying to help. Mr. Voss, one of them said, you need to come with us for safety. Damien shook his head. They won't stop because I hide. They'll stop when the world sees them. Beside him, Amira sat on the curb, arms wrapped around her knees. Her bare feet were cut and muddy, but she didn't flinch. She watched the black car disappear into the distance, her voice barely a whisper. They tried to silence me before too. He turned to her sharply. What do you mean? She hesitated. My brother, before he died, he told me he saw things. Doctors changing reports, hiding samples. He wanted to tell the news, but someone made him disappear. We thought it was an accident. Damien clenched his fists. It wasn't. She looked at him, eyes glistening. Now you understand why I came to your building that day. I didn't know your son, but I recognized that silence. He nodded slowly. You came to wake us all up. That night, Damien called his lawyer and closest confidant, Vera. She arrived at his penthouse just before midnight, drenched and exhausted. This is insane, she said, dropping a stack of papers on the table. You've made enemies in medicine, politics, even your own board. They won't just let you expose them. Damien looked out at the rain-soaked skyline. They can threaten me, smear me, even kill me, but the evidence is already out. He handed her a flash drive. Send this to every major outlet at 9 a.m. And if I don't show up to the press conference, play the footage. Vera's voice broke. Damien, you're talking like you won't make it. He smiled faintly. Truth always makes it. Amira stood quietly by the window, watching the city lights blur through the glass. You shouldn't fight alone, she said. Damien looked at her. You've done enough. I started it, she said. Let me finish it too. He hesitated, then nodded. Then you stand with me tomorrow. But once the truth's out, you vanish, disappear, go somewhere safe. She smiled. You still think safety exists? For a long time, no one spoke. Just the rain. By dawn, the city was buzzing again. News drones hovered above the Helix Dynamics Tower as crowds gathered outside. Reporters shouted, protesters chanted, signs waved through the fog, end medical corruption, and justice for the silent. At exactly 9, Damien stepped onto the stage set up outside his own building. Cameras flashed. His voice echoed through microphones. For years, I believed success meant control, he began. I built an empire to fix the world, and somewhere along the way, I forgot to listen. My son's silence became a product, and I funded the lie that kept him in it. The crowd murmured. He paused, glancing toward the audience where Amira stood barefoot on the wet pavement, eyes fixed on him. The system we trusted, the doctors, the investors, the corporations, they turned suffering into currency. But today that ends. Today we break the silence. He held up the flash drive. Everything you need to see is in here. Every falsified report, every bribed signature. I'm giving it all to the public. No deals. No settlements. Just truth. Applause erupted, but so did chaos. Several men in dark suits pushed through the crowd. One shouted, "Cut the feed!" Another grabbed a microphone cable. Amira saw them first. "Damien!" she screamed. Before he could react, one of the men lunged toward the stage. Security swarmed, shouts erupting as rain poured harder. In the confusion, Amira darted forward, slipping through the chaos and pulling Damien back just in time. The crowd roared, pushing forward to block the attackers. Someone yelled, "They're trying to stop the broadcast." The cameras kept rolling. The world was watching, live. Damien turned to the lens, breathing hard. "You can destroy my company, but you can't destroy conscience. If this is what it takes to wake up, then so be it." He slammed the flash drive into the broadcasting console himself. The screen behind him flickered to life, spilling documents, scans, and confidential memos onto every major network. The evidence was undeniable. The men froze. The damage was done. The crowd exploded into cheers as security dragged the attackers away. Damien stood in the rain, trembling, staring out at the ocean of faces chanting his name. He looked down at Amira, who was smiling through tears. "You did it," she said. He shook his head. "We did it." But before he could say more, she staggered. Her knees buckled. Damien caught her as she collapsed. "Amira!" he shouted. Her breath was shallow, her skin cold. "Guess. I finally made enough noise," she whispered weakly. "Stay with me," he said, shaking her lightly. "Don't you dare." She smiled faintly. "You can hear now. The world can hear. That's enough." Her hand fell away. The sound of the crowd faded under the pounding rain. Damien clutched her close, his chest shaking, eyes burning with tears. "You'll never be forgotten," he whispered. For a long time, he didn't move. Then, slowly, he lifted his head. The screens behind him still glowed, showing headlines already breaking across the world. Helix scandal exposed. Medical giants collapse under investigation. Amira's body was still, but her legacy was roaring through every speaker. Days later, the media called it the day silence spoke. Hospitals were raided, executives arrested, and new laws proposed. Damien donated his entire fortune to a foundation named after her, the Amira Project, dedicated to helping children silenced by corruption and neglect. 1 month later, a soft news clip aired, a boy, now smiling, sitting beside his father in a quiet park. "Dad," Elier said, his voice steady, "do you think she's happy now?" Damien looked at him, the sunlight glinting off his wedding ring, once a symbol of perfection, now a reminder of humility. "I think she's finally at peace." The boy smiled. "I still hear her sometimes. When the wind blows." Damien smiled faintly. "That's her way of saying she's proud." A pause. The camera lingered on the two of them, father and son, listening to the sound of life around them. Birds, laughter, the wind, and beneath it all, a whisper only they could feel. If this story moved you, don't just leave in silence. Hit the subscribe button, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and let's keep spreading stories that remind the world. Compassion still speaks louder than money.